And welcome to Drones in the Wild. I'm Rob, and today we're going to talk about the FAA reports on drone sightings that came out last week. Previous to the actual release of the information, the press had been reporting that it was 650 close calls by pilots that were being reported by the FAA. And when the actual reports were released last week, a different story emerged. And actually, if you look at the reports that are included, they include reports to air traffic control advisories, reports to the police, mainly by people on the ground, news reports, citizen sightings, and reports of downed UASs. And most of those were toys, by the way. Of the 650 odd reports in that listing, 8 involved evasive action by the manned aircraft, and those were all helicopters and general aviation aircraft. So no evasive action taken or required by airliners. Although there were 3 reports which you have to kind of do a little bit of analysis, but I think there were probably 3 reports that I would say were the drone came so close to the aircraft that they didn't have time to react anyways. So you could maybe increase that number a little bit. 2 reports involved overflying nuclear power plants. 5 were in the District of Columbia, which is a no drone fly zone. And surprisingly, only 1 from CAL FIRE. This really made the news in July and into August, where CAL FIRE was essentially airspace violations by drones, because really there were nothing was reported actual true close calls or anything like that, but airspace violations with drones over firefighting areas, and it seemed to be happening over and over again in California. And in one instance, there were supposedly 5 drones in the air simultaneously near a wildfire. And in the FAA reports, which go to mid-August, there's only 1 report from CAL FIRE. So that kind of surprised me. I was actually really looking forward to taking a look at the true reports from CAL FIRE, and they're not there except for 1, and that was June 25th. There are a lot of reports in it that do seem pretty legitimate, though, and they really revolve around one issue, and that is proximity to airports. So if you're a drone operator, please stay beyond 5 miles from airports. And if you go inside 5 miles, please coordinate with the airport. There were actually a couple of reports in this listing of incidents where the people involved, probably if they had coordinated with the airport, there really wouldn't have been any issues. For example, there was a construction company that was flying up to 100 feet, and he was off the approaches to the runway. There was no safety issues whatsoever. But he had to stop because he was violating the rules, and said, hey, but if he had coordinated in advance, I don't see any issues with what he was doing. So there were a few kind of strange things. A lot of the reports, if they, involved unidentified things. I have a feeling that drones have replaced UFOs. So if a pilot sees something and doesn't know what it is, he's going to call it a drone. I'm sure there's a lot less stigma to saying there was a drone up there, even if it's at flight level 350, than saying a UFO. So there are quite a few objects, and actually, in fact, in the reports, a lot of them state that they're not sure it was a drone, or they'll say it was a drone or a balloon. They can't really tell, which calls into question a lot of the reports. The other issue is a lot of them were at altitudes that some of which it's possible for a drone to be there, but certainly not flying around normally. My drone, if you fly to 5,000 feet, I'm going to be praying that it makes it back to Earth in one piece, because it's going to use up so much battery just getting up there. I mean, you got to remember, that's almost a mile just going straight up. And it's going to be using battery at a prodigious rate. And, you know, there is actually an example of a gentleman in Sweden who tried to fly his DJI F550 into the clouds, and it didn't make it back. And I believe that he actually probably encountered some icing issues up in the clouds. But regardless, it created control problems, and before he could bring it back down, the batteries went out and it just fell. And luckily fell into a park area. I'll provide a link for that video. It's not the smartest thing in the world. However, huge numbers of reports greater than 3,000 feet, and to be honest, a lot of reports greater than 8, 9, 10,000 feet. And to be honest, if I see a report where the altitude, they're measuring it in flight levels, I pretty much discount it as a drone sighting. Certainly not a consumer drone. It's probably more likely a weather balloon or even another aircraft. That gets to another issue of the descriptions. A lot of them didn't have descriptions. And probably because the size of drones compared to birds and the distances involved meant that they probably couldn't give an accurate description anyways. However, in the cases where there were descriptions, a lot of them included RC helicopters, balloons, model airplanes, simply lights at night. A lot of really huge UASs, ranging from 3 to 25 feet in diameter. And what was really interesting, a lot of circular shaped drones. I mean, a really large number of those. And 10 years ago, those would have been flying saucers. You know, they don't really, you know, most consumer drones on the market, I mean, here's my DJI Phantom 3. Kind of hard to mistake that for circular. You know, it kind of looks, from above certainly, it looks like a little X. You know, so a lot of, you know, kind of unusual descriptions. One other thing I find kind of interesting is there's another database called the Aviation Safety Reporting System. And this is a way for pilots to sort of self-report on close calls and things that they encountered or witnessed. And you can sort of keep up with that database. It's managed by NASA, and I'll put the link down below. But it is a little time late. I think the latest reports you can see are probably May or June right now. What's interesting, though, is even though the 650 FAA reports seem to have vacuumed up all kinds of drone sighting reports from a variety of sources, there was very little overlap with the ASRS database, which I found kind of interesting, especially because there are some reports in the ASRS database which probably don't fit the drone sensationalization narrative, but show some things and are pretty illustrative of some of the issues we face. There's actually a report in ASRS from this year of a Cessna who at 1,700 feet altitude collided with something that he believes was a drone. When he landed, they found superficial damage on the prop and the cowling. The aircraft was deemed airworthy, but and it clearly was not a biological that he hit because there was no blood and guts anywhere. So they knew that he hit something. He didn't see it though, and if you look at a Cessna, you know, instrument panel, you'll know why. It's a really high panel, so forward visibility in flight isn't the greatest. But he did hear and feel the impact. If he did hit a drone, and that's what he suspects, but he's not sure because he didn't see it, the drone probably was completely destroyed, whereas the aircraft was airworthy. And this is a small airplane. There's another report of a helicopter having a close call with a drone. This is also an ASRS from this year, where basically the drone got caught. It got close enough to be caught in the rotor wash of the helicopter. And what happened was it was sent tumbling down to earth, probably to its destruction. These kind of, there's a lot of hypotheticals out there. What will, when the day comes and a drone actually hits an airplane? Well, it probably already has happened. And certainly we've gotten close enough to a helicopter where the helicopter basically tossed the drone away with its rotor wash. So, these things are already happening, not to any great numbers, but we're seeing, if you actually look at the data, that the consequences may not be as dire as we thought. Nonetheless, reports like this didn't make it into the FAA database. Even though the pilot in the Cessna only suspected a drone, there are many reports, in fact, a very large number of reports in the FAA listing where the drone was only suspected. However, one thing I will say though, and I mentioned this at the beginning, the vast majority of the legitimate reports in the listing do involve proximity to airports. The other thing is that there were a lot of high altitude reports. Now, a lot of those probably aren't really drones, but if we as drone operators keep outside 5 miles from airports, unless we coordinate with the airport, and if we keep below 400 feet above ground level, the huge majority of these reports become something that won't happen. And if it is reported, you can rest assured that it wasn't a drone. Now, my DJI Phantom 3 actually has in the firmware altitude limits. 500 meters is the highest I can go. There are a few sort of little loopholes in that, but that involves automatic return to home flight. In normal flight regimes, I can't go above 500 meters if I wanted to. However, some of your older drones don't have such firmware limitations like that. The other thing with the newer drones, at least I can speak for the DJI Phantom 3, is that it has no-fly zones over airports. And those no-fly zones actually extend out from the airport at a 15-degree climb angle, which most of your aircraft are not going to actually fly in that, at a 15-degree angle. So it does mean that we have to pay attention to approaches to airports even outside 5 nautical miles. But, you keep within those two guidelines by themselves. If you follow those, under 400 feet AGL, greater than 5 miles from airports, these reports, either don't happen or they're not really drones. So, and that's where we can play a part in this. And if you have any questions, concerns, feel free to comment. If you liked what you saw, please hit like and by all means subscribe. Later. Cylindrical red and silver. What the heck is that? The right side of the aircraft at 2,100 feet, flying at 85 knots. 85 knots? UAS had a transponder and was squawking 1200 code. Dude, that was an airplane. That Thunderwings Aviation 303 at flight level 200 reported a UAS 2 feet in diameter, approximately 1,000 feet below. Whatever. Yes, with single red light between 3 and 10 feet wide. Wow, that's pretty big. Andrews Air Traffic Control Tower advised an unidentified Gulfstream reported a UAS on 3 miles final. UAS described as a large vulture. Well, I guess vultures are unmanned. So, hey. UAS was round/cylindrical. Miami-Dade police found the operator and advised not to fly. And they probably had no idea why they advised them not to fly. Cirrus SR-22 reported UAS operating 1 to 2 miles off right wing at 6,000 feet, 9 miles north-northeast Savannah. UAS appeared round-bodied and approximately 15 feet across. C-172 reported a red and white UAS 2 feet in diameter at 6,000 feet. These things there's so many of these are so high. I mean, if I fly mine to 6,000 feet, it's not going to make it back to Earth because the battery will run out. U.S. Air Express 4808, A-8, reported a fast-moving UAS resembling an airplane passing 1,000 to 1,500 feet. It probably was an airplane. Aspen Airport Ops advised UAS sighted 3/4 of a mile south of Aspen at 500 feet over Buttermilk Ski Resort, where I guess the X Games were being held. Pitkin County Sheriff Department charged and released the perp. UAS confiscated. For what? Okay. I'm sure, just flying is automatically reckless, I guess. Here's, a letter or an email text. It says, "Gentlemen, I flew in a helicopter today to take pictures of the Delaware Special Olympics polar plunge in Rehoboth Beach, along with another helicopter from the Delaware State Police. Unseen to us, there was a heavy octocopter drone," and drone is in capital letters, "also taking aerial photographs. Period. At our altitude. Period. I have enclosed a link to Skyjack Aerial Photography, who was and continues to fly drones, all caps, commercially flying drones. They are going to hell. C-172 at 1,700 feet, 9 miles southwest of Fort Worth, reported a UAS or balloon 300 to 400 feet below the aircraft. If you can't tell if it's a UAS or a balloon, why is it on this list? Unfortunately, there's several cases like that. McClellan Palomar Air Traffic Control Tower observed and received reports from multiple aircraft of a UAS with multiple bright white lights operating between 8 and 10,000 feet, 10 to 15 miles west of CRQ, over the past 3 nights. Dude, that's a UFO. But it's a UFO the radio because it continues to say aircraft descends, then disappears when position mentioned on frequency. How convenient. Cessna C-525 observed a reddish-orange-yellow colored UAS model unknown while southbound at flight level 200. You're kidding me. Republic 4532 reported a UAS at 3,000 feet, 15 miles northeast of Sarasota. Pilot advised UAS was approximately 1 mile away, causing the pilot to be somewhat unsure if the object was a UAS. Right. Unbelievable that this is even in the list. Okay. Let's see. Orange County Sheriff Helicopter Chase 1 reported a UAS close proximity while at 600 feet, 3 miles southwest of Orlando. Law enforcement on scene, UAS operator apprehended. At least they didn't call him a perp. Reported a shiny silver odd-shaped UAS. Odd-shaped UAS. NCT advised experimental Zenair CH-2T reported a green scale model airplane within 100 feet of location, 8 miles northwest of Merced at 2,200 feet. Because model airplanes are drones. There's a lot of model airplane reports in this. Oh, here's a good one. Indianapolis ARTCC received a report of 3 large UAS flying north side of Indianapolis. Law enforcement advised that UASs were the size of a compact car and had 2 lights on each. Classic. Compact car? Yeah. Joe Billy Jim Bob's got a compact car-sized drone in his backyard. Let's see. Jacksonville Approach reported Cicada TBM-7 observed UAS white and round 200 feet above him, 67 miles north-northeast of Columbia at flight level 280. Not, I mean, you're kidding. Crazier. Flying Cloud Air Traffic Control Tower reported Hawker Beechcraft B-77 observed a UAS that resembled a dog. At 1,700 feet when it came within 200 feet of the aircraft. I just picture a dog flying through the air. I wonder what kind of dog. Delta 874 reported possible drone 1.8 miles on final. Approximately 1,000 feet, 50 feet off the left wing. Advised at first he thought it was birds. After a closer look, thought it was a drone, but is not 100% sure. Multiple subsequent PIREPs only reported birds. Dude, you saw a bird. Okay. Circular and white in color. Like a UFO. Let's see. Portland, Maine. A radio-controlled helicopter approximately 8 inches long was found on the airport at the intersection of Taxiway Alpha and Charlie, standing upright and facing the runway. Because it's very important, it's facing the runway. 8-inch helicopter, so a toy, okay? You know what that 8-inch helicopter would do to an aircraft if it hit it? Yeah, nothing. Okay. Oh, here's a classic. A citizen called and reported a 25-foot drone crashed near the intersection of Avenue J and 240th Street East in a residential neighborhood of Lancaster, California. The caller reported the drone had been testing in the area for the previous 5 days. No reports of injury or damage on the ground. Well, that's good because that's a 25-foot something. Something that big, I don't even call it a drone. That's like an airplane. You would have think something that big crashing in a neighborhood, you'd think that'd be on the news. There's a military drone crashed 4 miles east of Wilsona Gardens. Because, military drones are on this list too. Not too many of them. There's only a few reports for military stuff, but they are there. About 3 feet across. Dull blue or gray in color. Oh, this is at Sonoma as well, and flying figure eights up to 2,000 feet above ground. Yep. So we basically have the same event recorded twice on this list. Good job, FAA, or whatever intern you had putting this list together. C-172 reported what looked like a black drone or possibly a black balloon north of the airport. Some of these, I just can't believe it. Police 3 was able to stop the pilot of the UAS and determined it was an out-of-towner that was unaware, who was unaware that he could not fly in the area. It's crazy out-of-towners. Oh, yeah. U.S. Secret Service reported information received from the U.S. Coast Guard that a UAS was observed operating in the vicinity of POTUS while playing golf. Yeah. What do you think the chances they actually saw anything? Oh, here's one. You wonder why they even bothered. Citizen reported a UAS over the Orchard Shopping Center in Lake Forest, California. UAS was black and white, 6-foot quadcopter with 2 green and 2 red lights. The UAS flew maneuvers back and forth over the length of the shopping mall at 100 feet for 30 minutes. Yeah, I got news for you. That was perfectly legit. I wouldn't even be surprised if the mall paid for it. Let's see. Med 2 on rooftop at Mass General Hospital in downtown Boston reported a drone operating along the Charles River at approximately 400 feet. Okay, they're operating over a river at 400 feet. Unless they were within 5 miles of Logan, I see absolutely nothing wrong with that. Let's see, Atlanta Tracon advised Delta 1958 reported metallic cylinder-shaped UAS passed 500 feet off the left side while southeast bound at 12,000 feet. Oh my God. Let's see, first officer said he didn't get a good look at it because it went by so fast. He sensed it was cylindrical and silver due to the sun glinting off of it. Oh, here we go. Sonoma's at it again. Large light blue UAS in the shape of a flying wing. Oh, but this one is an individual citizen reporting this because it was 1,000 feet over his property. And he reported seeing this drone regularly for several days. So, like, the same thing is like, this is like the exact same event. And it's in like multiple reports. If you see a flying wing drone, chances are the report probably is in and around Sonoma County Airport. Let's see. Pilot described the U.S. as a gray-blue warbird aircraft with a 3 to 6 foot wingspan. So like what, a model P-51 or something? Unbelievable. I mean, it's almost like, are you just trying to pad the numbers with kind of fluff like that? That's not really what we consider a drone. The drone was operated outside the stadium, not at any time interfering with gameplay. The drone was a standard quadcopter type with a GoPro camera attached. The perp has been identified as a white male. He has been charged with 2 counts of reckless endangerment and will be processed at the 110th precinct. The perp. Especially, he wasn't even over the stadium. That's classic. Reckless endangerment of what? The fire hydrant on the street outside? Jeez. An Air Force KC-135 at block altitude. Flight level 260 to 280 reported a 3 to 4 meter black and white UAS heading southeast bound at 2,000 feet above him. You know, those crazy drone operators at 30,000 feet. Grumman American AA5 reported model airplane within a quarter mile while on 2-mile final at Northeast Philadelphia Airport. Model airplane strikes again. New York TRACON advised Transstates 4132 observed a dark-colored delta-winged UAS on the Jersey side of the George Washington Bridge. Okay. Caller reported remote control aircraft operating in the vicinity of the Seahawks training facility, VMAC, in Renton, Washington. Caller stated it appeared to be between 4 and 500 AGL. VMAC is 3 miles northeast of Renton Airport. Now, it'd be kind of cool to fly a drone over a Seahawks practice, but at 4 to 500 feet, those players, they look like little ants. Delta 570 observed a UAS on the left side approximately half a mile away. Good distance. While on 5-mile final for runway 22 at LaGuardia. This was on June 8th. I think this is one of the ones that was in the news. I don't think the follow-up made the news, though. Because the follow-up info is that the UAS was black with a 3 to 5 foot wingspan and was towing 3 balloons. VFR aircraft receiving ATC service reported passing an object approximately 500 feet below him at 9,500 feet. Pilot described the object as round, circular, red in color, and reported that it could have been a drone or a balloon. Piper PA-28 reported seeing a red UAS or balloon with an antenna on top. And here's one that is one of the CAL FIRE firefighting issues. And you heard multiple reports in the news about that, but there's only one actually in the FAA database, and it's from June 25th. Tanker 44, a Lockheed P-2, encountered a UAS 8 miles north of San Bernardino at 3,200 feet while conducting firefighting operations. Tanker 44 and all other firefighting aircraft departed the fire zone to avoid conflicting with the drone. Whatever. I mean, complete overreaction. I mean, an ambulance driver doesn't, refuse to drive because there's cars on the road. Same thing with a real fire truck. And that's the only one. That's the only firefighting report in here. Reported a UAS or balloon at 10,000 feet. Reported seeing a white, high, fixed-wing model aircraft at 1,200 feet. Flying in the vicinity of the Future of Flight Museum at Payne Field. And it appeared to be headed towards runway 16 Romeo. In other words, it was an aircraft on approach. Good job. Here's one that actually is shared with the Aviation Safety Reporting System. This is actually a Cessna C-172 with a student pilot and an instructor, and they observed a drone in their flight path at approximately 1,200 feet, and the instructor took evasive action, including a 35-degree right bank, to maneuver away from the drone. But that report is in ASRS as well, and it's kind of surprising that a lot of ASRS reports that are pretty relevant are not in here. Here's a good one. Pilot on the ground reported a UAS a quarter mile west of the approach end of runway 16 at Redding, California, at 100 feet. Local PD verified the UAS was being used by a construction company and was advised to cease operations. That's a case where if you just coordinated with the airport, because he was out of the approach area. I mean, he's west of runway 16, so probably was zero threat to aircraft. All he had to do was coordinate that. Pilot described the U.S. as primarily white in color with red markings on the wingtips, and shape was described as having similarities to a glider with slender fuselage, with an approximate wingspan of 8 feet. Cessna C-172 observed a red model airplane at 1,000 feet, not a drone. Aircraft was southbound departure from COS, reported passing a very small drone at flight level 240. Experimental sport cruiser at 9,000 feet reported a large white fast maneuvering UAS at 8,000 feet. Nice. B-55 inbound runway 27 Lima on 5-mile final reported a small unmanned aircraft paralleling him and slightly above him at about 1,000 feet. The small aircraft was reported as small, white, and had light-colored stripes. Small aircraft is appropriate because it probably was a small aircraft. That'd be interesting if I had a drone that could actually fly along with an airplane. Kind of scary, actually. 8 reported a remote control model airplane with a 5-foot wingspan maneuvering at 1,500 feet. American 629 reported a 6-bladed drone. Don't know what that is. At 14,900 feet. Oh, well, the aircraft was at 14,900 feet. The drone was 200 feet higher. Okay. Crazy. Yes, a toy drone that landed on a hangar at Dothan Airport in Alabama. Classic. Southwest 383 on 5-mile final to runway 16 Romeo reports seeing an ultralight or drone type aircraft below him.